It began with a sound that should not have existed. Far out in the black void, where only dust and silence reigned, a deep, pulsing tone echoed through the combs of the Odyssey. Captain Elias Kane had been in space long enough to know when something felt wrong. This felt worse than wrong. The signal was faint but constant, like a heartbeat buried under layers of static, coming from a sector that every chart in the galaxy marked with one thing: a red circle and 2 words: dead zone. No. Ships entered that space. No one spoke of it, and those who did rarely lived long enough to tell more. The bridge crew stared at the data readouts, their faces pale under the glow of holographic maps. The signal was coming from deep inside the Forbidden Zone, a place that had been under Galactic Council quarantine for almost 2 centuries. No approach, no scans, no exceptions. They called it Earth, but no one in this age even knew if that was the planet's real name or why it was sealed away. Some said it was cursed. Others whispered about ancient weapons, alien plagues, and horrors buried in its soil. But whatever truth there was, it had been erased from official records. "Captain," said Navigator Lyra, her voice barely above a whisper, "the signal is human." The words hung in the air like frozen airlock frost. Human. The crew were human, yes, but humanity had been spread across dozens of worlds for thousands of years. Earth was supposed to be their birthplace, yet no one alive had ever seen it. Kane's jaw tightened. "Play it." The audio burst through the speakers, broken, shaky, distorted by time and distance. But there was no mistaking it. "This is Commander Holt. If anyone hears this, do not come here." They lied. The truth. Is the message cut into a shriek of static, as if something had swallowed the transmission whole? Lyra's hands trembled over the console. "That was a real distress call, Captain. It's only 2 hours old." Kane didn't answer right away. His mind was turning, weighing the risk against the gnawing curiosity that had haunted humanity for generations. Every instinct told him to turn away. But the last time someone had sent a human distress signal from the dead zone was never. This was the first, which meant someone or something wanted it heard. "Set a course," Kane finally said. "We go in." A hush fell over the crew. The Odyssey's engines groaned to life, cutting through the quiet of deep space. Outside the viewport, the dead zone loomed an expanse of darkness so thick it seemed to swallow starlight. The borders were marked by old council beacons, their lights still flashing a silent warning across the centuries: "Enter, and you will not return." As they crossed the threshold, the stars behind them seemed to blink out one by one. Space here was wrong. The laws of physics bent at strange angles. Gravity shifted in faint pulses as if they were inside the ribcage of something vast and sleeping. The crew's comms began picking up faint whispers, words in no language any of them knew. Kane gripped the armrest of his chair, his knuckles white. Then the Odyssey's long-range scanners caught sight of it. A planet blue and green under. A haze of clouds hanging in the void like a jewel. Earth. It looked alive. Beautiful even. But beauty in space was often the sharpest trap. As they approached orbit, the distress signal returned clearer. This time, it was no longer a warning. It was a call. A single phrase repeated over and over in a low, urgent tone. "Come home. Come home. Come home." Lyra's voice shook. "Captain, the signal is coming from inside the planet's core." Kane didn't reply, because for the first time since they'd entered the dead zone, he felt something cold slide into his mind. A whisper, not through the combs, but inside his head. It said his name, and it wasn't human. The planet hung below them like a perfect lie. From orbit, Earth looked untouched. Toshans glimmered. Continents stretched under drifting white clouds, and sunlight broke across its surface like it was any other living world. But Captain Kane knew better. The Odyssey's sensors read nothing. No cities, no satellites, no power signatures, no heat traces. It was like scanning a painting, beautiful, but dead. Yet the signal pulsed stronger now, its slow rhythm echoing through the hull, into the bones of every crew member. Some said they could feel it in their teeth. Lyra's hands stayed clenched on her console. "Captain, the frequency is changing, syncing with our heartbeats." Ripple of unease passed through the crew. Space veterans didn't scare easily, but this was different. Kane ordered a low orbit, keeping the ship above the source of the transmission deep in the planet's core. The closer they got, the more the voice shifted. Longer. The distressed Commander Holt. Now it spoke in different voices. Sometimes male, sometimes female, sometimes a child. All repeating the same phrase. "Come home." Kane activated a secure. Channel 2 is First Officer Draven. "I don't like this. Whoever or whatever sent that first message, it's gone. Now this is something else." Draven's eyes were fixed on the viewport, or something wearing a human voice. Suddenly, alarms screamed. The Odyssey's external cameras flickered, static ripping through the visuals before clearing to show. Clouds. Not normal clouds. These were rising fast, twisting upward from the surface like they were reaching for the ship. In seconds, they wrapped around the hull, blotting out all view of space. The sound outside changed, no longer silence, but a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through metal and flesh alike. Then the ship moved. Not under its own power, something was pulling them down. Kane barked orders, but the engines barely fought. The force, gravity readings spiked, then dropped, then spiked again. Like they were being reeled in by something alive, the crew watched the planet's surface grow larger on the screen forests. Mountains, rivers, until suddenly they weren't falling anymore. They were floating right above a massive, perfectly circular crater. The signal was deafening now. So loud, Kane thought his skull would split. And then, just for him, he heard a whisper in his head again. "You made it, Elias." He froze. No one here had called him by his first name. Not in that voice. Not in the voice of his mother, who had been dead for 30 years. The hum stopped. The ship dropped.
Up the last thing.
Kane saw before they plunged into the crater's shadow. Ground inside wasn't ground at all. It was an eye. The Odyssey slammed into darkness, but there was no crash. Instead, the crew found themselves weightless, drifting in a void where no stars shone. The controls were dead, the power indicators blank, yet somehow Kane could still breathe. His voice cracked through the cum. "Status report now." No one answered. Not because they didn't hear him, but because they weren't there anymore. Kane floated in silence, surrounded by thick black air that seemed to move like it was alive. Then far ahead, a pale glow bloomed, revealing something impossible: the entire crew. Suspended in midair, eyes open but glassy, facing the same direction. They weren't moving, they weren't blinking, and their lips were moving in perfect unison. He pushed toward them, each movement feeling like swimming through syrup. As he got closer, he heard it low, overlapping whispers spilling from every crew member at once, words in dozens of languages, some human, some alien, some Kane had never heard in his life, all weaving together into one single sentence: "You were never supposed to come back." Then, as one, their eyes rolled toward. And Kane realized something was inside them, looking through them. The voices merged into one. It spoke with the voice of his father. "We warned them to seal this place. We told them Earth was not yours anymore." Kane's mind spun. "Who are you? What is this?" The answer came not as sound, but as memory. Images burned into his head an Earth he had never known, one of endless cities and towering spires. Then, the silence, oceans boiling, the sky turning black, creatures rising from beneath the crust, feeding on minds, wearing faces of loved ones until there were none left to wear, and then the ships, not human ships, but alien. Armadas ringed the planet, locking it away, declaring it forbidden to all species. But something had been left behind, something that still lived, and waited. Kane tried to pull free, but the black air coiled around his arms like ropes. The whisper returned, softer this time. Shouldn't have heard the call, Elias. Now you belong here too. From the darkness beneath them, the eye opened again, larger than before, its iris twisting, focusing on him alone. The crew began to sink toward it, pulled down like dolls into the pupil. One by one, they vanished into the void. When it was his turn, Cain fought harder, but the voice spoke in his mother's tone against calm, warm, final, come home. The black swallowed him. The blackness spat Cain out like a discarded thought. He landed hard on smooth stone, not the cold metal floor of the Odyssey, but something ancient. When he looked up, his breath caught. He stood in the middle of a city. On Earth, but not his Earth. The skyline was wrong towers that twisted. Like bone, streets paved in metal that pulsed faintly underfoot, buildings humming as though alive. The air was heavy, filled with a faint metallic taste. The strangest part? It was empty. No people, no animals, except for a faint, distant rhythm. Like the slow beat of a massive heart, Cain stepped forward, scanning the alien yet familiar. Streets. Some walls were engraved with human words, others with scripts he had seen on alien worlds. All blended together into strange patterns, almost like warnings. He passed a shattered billboard showing a smiling family. At first, it looked normal, but as he stared, their smiles twitched into something unnatural, eyes stretching wider than human eyes could. The image flickered, then melted away into static. Then he saw movement. A child stood at the far end of the street, maybe 8 years old, with long hair and bare feet. She was facing away from him, humming a tune. Something about that tune made his stomach knot. It was the same lullaby his mother used to sing to him. "Hey," he called. The girl stopped humming but didn't turn around. She tilted her head, slightly, as if listening. Cain took a step closer. That's when he noticed her shadow on the ground. It didn't match her. Her shadow was taller, broad-shouldered, and it was turning toward him. The girl's voice was small, trembling. "You're not supposed to be here." The shadow fully faced him now. It had no eyes, no mouth, just a black shape stretching toward him across the glowing street. Cain backed away, but the shadow lunged forward, slamming into his feet, racing up his legs like smoke. It burned cold, slipping under his skin. His vision blurred. In the distance, the girl's voice echoed, almost breaking. Into a sob, they're waking up. From every direction, shapes began to emerge from the buildings. Tall, thin figures with 2 long limbs, faces smoothed over where mouths should be. They moved without sound, gliding closer. Each step they took made the ground pulse harder, the heartbeat in the air growing louder. Cain turned to run, but the street in front of him twisted, bending upward into the sky like a wall. The city was changing around him, folding in on itself, trapping him. The girl finally turned toward him, and her eyes were not human at all. Cain's breath came in sharp bursts as the city walls twisted higher, cutting off the last view of the horizon. The child stood perfectly still now, watching him with those inhuman eyes, black, endless, like windows into a void that wanted to swallow him whole. "They've been waiting," she said softly, and her voice no longer sounded like a child's. It carried an echo, like to people speaking at once. Behind her, the tall, faceless shapes gathered. They didn't walk so much as drift, their movements smooth and unnatural, as if reality bent for them. Their bodies shimmered at the edges like heat rising off asphalt. Cain tried to speak, to ask what they were, but the words caught in his throat. The air was heavier now, pressing into him like deep ocean water. His suit's oxygen warning blinked red, but he knew it wasn't the air, it was them. The girl stepped forward, and the ground beneath her feet lit up with veins of red, light spreading outward like cracks in glass. The buildings around them responded, their humming growing into a low, vibrating tone that Cain could feel in his bones. "They never left Earth," she continued, her eyes locked on his. "When your kind went to the stars, you thought you escaped, but this was never your planet to keep." Cain stumbled back, heart pounding. "Who are they?" Her expression didn't change. "The ones who claimed it first, the ones who own it still. You walk on their skin. You breathe what they exhale. You live because they allow it." One of the tall figures glided closer, its featureless head tilted toward Cain, and for the first time it spoke, but not in sound. The voice slithered into his mind, cold and ancient. Why? Have you come back? Kane's knees weakened. Images flashed through his mind, oceans boiling, cities crumbling, billions of humans screaming under a black sky. And through it all, these figures stood watching, never moving, never speaking. He swallowed hard. We didn't know. The voice pressed deeper into his skull, each word heavier than the last. You were warned. The girl's form began to flicker, her shape distorting, stretching into something taller, darker. Kane realized, too, late, she was never a child. She had just worn the idea of one to lure him closer. The ground split open with a deafening crack. From the fissures, black mist poured upward, swirling around him, tugging at his body like invisible hands. His cums were dead. His suit's system screamed with errors. You can't go back, the girl thing said, her voice now a guttural growl. You've been seen. That means you belong to them now. The faceless figures surrounded him in a perfect circle. The heartbeat in the air became deafening. The mist wrapped tighter around his limbs. And just before the darkness swallowed him whole, Kane understood Earth wasn't just a dead zone, it was a trap. The void spat Kane out like a rejected thought. One moment he was in the choking mist, surrounded by the faceless shapes, and the next, he was sprawled on cold metal. His helmet was gone. His suit hung in tatters. Above him, a ceiling of shifting light pulsed alive, breathing. A figure stepped into view. It wasn't one of the faceless ones. This one had a face human, weathered and impossibly old. His eyes held the same black depths as the girl's, but there was a flicker of something else. Recognition. You made it farther than most, the old man said. His voice was calm, but each word seemed to carry the weight of centuries. Kane tried to speak, but his throat burned. Where? Where am I? The old man crouched beside him. You're still on Earth, or what's left of it, but not in the way you think. He glanced upward. This place isn't land or sky. It's the body of something much older, much hungrier. Kane's mind reeled. The planet is alive. The old man smiled faintly. Alive, aware, and unforgiving. Humans were never its owners. We were. Parasites it tolerated for a time. It's the ones you saw the faceless are. Its immune system. They clear out what doesn't belong. Kane's stomach tightened. Then why am I still alive? The man's gaze hardened. Because you were marked. You carry the signal now? That's why the dead zone exists. Not to keep people out, but to keep this infection from spreading to the rest of the galaxy. The realization struck like a blow. It wasn't fear of humans that kept alien fleets away from Earth. It was fear of what lived on Earth, of what could leave it if given the chance. Kane's pulse quickened. If I get off-world, you won't, the man cut in sharply. Once the signal is inside you, you can't run. I'll find you anywhere. Every ship, every planet, every star, they'll burn them all to stop you. Suddenly, the ceiling above shifted, forming a vast black eye. It looked down on Kane with the cold patience of a predator that had already won. The air vibrated with its silent voice, returned to the soil. The old man stood and stepped back. You've seen the truth. You've heard it. There's no leaving now. Kane scrambled to his feet, desperate, looking for any way out. The walls began to close in, their living flesh folding inward. The ground beneath him softened, pulling at his boots like quicksand. The old man's last words echoed as Kane was dragged under. Earth doesn't let go of what it claims. And then dashed darkness, far above. In orbit, an alien patrol ship picked up a single faint signal pulsing from the dead zone. The crew froze. They didn't try to scan it. They didn't investigate. They turned their ship away fast, because everyone knew the rule. You don't cross into Earth's shadow. You don't answer its call, and if you hear the signal, you're already dead.